Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep on the JFK assassination,
Ooh.
but not the stuff you usually hear.
Yeah.
We're going way past the Warren Report and
Yeah.
checking out all these like alternative theories and evidence, and all this stuff is coming from a bunch of articles and publications.
Cool.
So if you've ever wondered about those arguments against the official story,
Yeah.
like who's saying them and what proof they're using,
Yeah.
well, get ready, because this is some really interesting stuff.
I bet.
You might even start questioning everything you thought you knew.
It happens.
So, are you ready to dive in with me?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm always fascinated by how these kind of alternative narratives challenge us to think critically about the information that's out there.
Totally. So let's jump right in with Fair Play magazine.
Okay.
This publication really digs deep into the JFK assassination.
Right.
They're known for going after the single bullet theory, which is like one of the most debated parts of the Warren Report.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
What I find interesting about Fair Play is that they don't just present one side of the story.
Yeah.
They show you all the different viewpoints, and they want you to make up your own mind.
Like they're giving you all these puzzle pieces.
Exactly.
And they're like, go ahead, figure it out.
Exactly.
One piece that really caught my eye was about Dan Rather.
Oh, yeah.
And his early reporting on the Zapruder film.
Oh, wow. No, that's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a Zapruder film.
Right.
You know, that home movie, The Assassination.
Yeah.
It's like crucial evidence.
Absolutely.
And Rather was a big deal at CBS back then.
Mm-hmm.
And his descriptions of the film really shaped how people saw things.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And he said that President Kennedy's head, quote, went forward with considerable violence when the fatal shot hit.
Yeah.
But if you've seen the film, the head moves backward.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a huge discrepancy.
Totally.
And it's caused a lot of debate.
Uh-huh.
Now, Rather later defended his reporting, saying it was chaotic back then.
No, yeah.
Hard to be totally accurate right after something so shocking.
Right.
But some researchers like John Killian, they see this as like a red flag.
Ooh.
It makes you wonder if there were biases in the media even back then.
Yeah, like shaping the story from the get-go.
Exactly.
It really makes you think, okay, so Fair Play also digs into Ruth Paine's story.
Oh, Ruth Paine.
Ah.
Now she's a key figure.
Yeah, she was close friends with Marina Oswald.
Right, Lee Harvey Oswald's wife.
Exactly, and she was right there in the middle of everything leading up to the assassination.
Yeah, her account is super important.
Totally.
Because she was letting Marina and her kids stay with her while Oswald was in Dallas.
Right.
And she was there when the police searched her garage.
Yeah.
Where they found the supposed murder weapon.
So in Fair Play, Paine talks about Oswald as this difficult guy, like controlling towards his wife.
Right.
Always bringing up Marxist ideology to explain everything.
Okay.
But what really got me was she insisted she couldn't imagine him being violent. Wow, let alone killing the president.
That's really interesting because it clashes with how the Warren Report paints him.
Right.
As this lone wolf assassin with communist ties.
It's totally different.
And that difference is at the heart of a lot of these alternative theories.
That's a great point. But things get even more interesting when we look at the COPA conference.
Oh, yeah. What happened there?
So researchers there directly challenged Paine's story.
How so?
They suggested that the Paines maybe had a bigger role.
Oh,
like they might have even helped with a cover-up.
Really?
Yeah. They brought up the purchase of an Oldsmobile right before the assassination. And they think it wasn't just a financial thing like Michael Paine said.
Okay.
They think it was meant for Oswald to use.
Interesting.
And they also questioned Michael Paine's claim that he couldn't tell a rifle was in his garage.
Even with his military background.
Yeah, you'd think he'd recognize that.
You would think.
Especially since that's where they found the rifle.
That does seem strange.
Right. And then there's Sue Wheaton. Okay.
She knew Ruth Paine later on, and she claimed Paine was acting suspicious down in Nicaragua.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like she was gathering intel on Americans who were against U.S. policies there.
Wow. That's a pretty serious accusation.
It is. It suggests a much deeper connection to intelligence stuff.
Yeah.
Than just being friends with Marina Oswald.
Way beyond.
Okay, so moving on, Fair Play also has this article by Brad J. Parker.
Okay.
About what he calls the missing Parkland witnesses.
Missing Parkland witnesses.
Yeah, so these were medical professionals who treated President Kennedy.
Right.
But they were never interviewed by the Warren Commission.
Huh. That's strange.
Right. Parker argues that their testimonies could have been crucial.
Yeah.
They might have shed light on the president's wounds and where the shots came from.
Yeah.
And he points out that Arlen Specter,
who later became a senator.
yeah, he was one interviewing the doctors, and he was a big supporter of the single bullet theory. So the guy who was pushing for that theory also got to choose which doctors to talk to.
Exactly. Seems like a conflict of interest to me.
Yeah, for sure. So just to clarify for those who might not know, what's the single bullet theory again?
Basically, it claims that one bullet fired by Oswald went through President Kennedy and then hit Governor Connolly, who was sitting in front of him.
Right.
But a lot of people think that's unlikely.
Yeah, given all the wounds and the path the bullet would have had to take.
Exactly. So Parker is saying that by picking and choosing which doctors to interview, Specter could have made sure only the testimonies that supported his theory were included.
That's a big deal. It raises serious questions about whether the Warren Commission was truly impartial, or if they were trying to hide evidence that didn't fit their narrative.
Right. Okay, now we got to talk about David Rohn's take on Gerald Posner's book, Case Closed.
Oh, yeah. Posner's book was a big defense of the Warren Report.
Huge. It was a bestseller.
Right. He was saying Oswald acted alone, end of story.
But Rohn, a JFK assassination expert, totally ripped it apart.
Wow, how so?
Well, his main argument is that Posner twists the evidence.
Like what kind of evidence?
Especially stuff related to the Zapruder film to make it fit the lone gunman story.
That's a serious accusation.
Right.
It highlights this bigger debate we keep coming back to.
Yeah.
How much can we trust what we're being told?
Right.
And are people just interpreting things to fit their agenda?
It makes you think twice about who to believe.
For sure.
Okay, so another controversial figure is Jim Garrison.
Oh, yeah, the New Orleans district attorney.
Exactly. He did his own investigation in the late 60s.
That was a big deal.
Yeah.
His investigation was super controversial.
Yeah, he was all about the possibility of a conspiracy.
Right.
But people accused him of messing with witnesses and coaching them.
Yeah, I remember that.
But we have this rebuttal from his son, Lyon H. Garrison.
Oh, wow.
Defending his dad's work against those accusations.
Interesting.
He specifically addresses claims from David Snyder in the Times-Picayune and says they're baseless.
Sorry.
Lyon Garrison totally believes in his father's integrity.
Yeah.
He thinks his dad was targeted because his findings challenged the official narrative.
It's interesting how personal this gets.
Yeah.
Like you have Garrison's son fighting to protect his dad's reputation.
It shows how deeply this event affected everyone involved and how the search for truth can be tangled up with loyalty and protecting loved ones.
It's a reminder that there are real people at the heart of this story.
Absolutely.
People wrestling with the consequences of this event.
Exactly.
It's true. It really brings in the human element to all of this, doesn't it?
It does. And speaking of personal stories, we have John Keelan's account of visiting Dealey Plaza.
Oh, yeah.
It's like reading a detective novel.
Really?
He walks you through the streets, talking to people, trying to piece things together.
Cool.
It really captures the vibe of the place.
I bet.
You know, like a mix of history and kind of a spectacle.
Wow.
He even mentions people selling JFK Assassination newsletters right there on the grassy knoll. No way. Seriously.
Yeah, it's wild. It's like this tragic event has become this whole cultural phenomenon.
What do you think?
It does. But Kellen also gets into some of the less mainstream stuff.
Like what?
Like Roscoe White, this guy linked to organized crime.
I've heard that name.
Some people think he was one of the shooters.
That's a controversial one.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Some researchers think he's a distraction, while others think he was key to the whole conspiracy.
It just goes to show how many unanswered questions there are.
So many. And Kellen talks about this missed opportunity he had to go inside the Texas theater where they arrested Oswald with this guy named Warren Butch Burroughs, who actually worked there on the day of the assassination.
Wow, and he didn't go.
He didn't. He totally regrets it now.
I bet. Yeah, hindsight is 20/20, right?
It is. And it shows how important firsthand accounts are.
Totally.
For sometimes the best insights come from those unexpected encounters and stories.
Absolutely.
No.
So what else did Kellen have to say? Well, he also visited the Sixth Floor Museum.
Oh, right, in the Texas School Book Depository.
Exactly. And he felt like they presented the Warren Commission's findings as, like, the absolute truth.
Yeah, a lot of researchers have a problem with that.
They do. They feel like the museum doesn't show enough of the alternative theories.
Or the evidence against the official narrative.
Right. It's like, who gets to control the story?
That's a big question.
It is. And then Kellen meets this guy, Dan Stevens.
Okay.
He's a researcher who thinks shots came from behind the grassy knoll fence.
Interesting.
Yeah, he even points to figures like Eugene Hale Brading.
Now, Brading had ties to organized crime, right?
He did, and he was arrested near Dealey Plaza right after the assassination.
So suspicious. But what was Stephen's theory?
He weaves this whole complex story,
Right back,
linking the assassination to the mafia, the Dallas police, the KKK.
Wow.
Even powerful guys like oil billionaire H.L. Hunt.
It's a lot of connections.
It is, and it might seem far-fetched to some people.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to remember that these theories are often based on speculation.
Right.
The trick is to separate fact from fiction.
Totally. And be critical of the evidence.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, so let's switch gears a bit.
Okay.
And take a look at this document that gives us a peek behind the curtain of the Assassination Records Review Board.
The ARRB.
Yeah. They were the ones re-examining all the evidence.
Right.
And releasing those classified documents to the public.
What did they find?
Well, they faced a lot of pushback
From
the FBI, mostly. They tried to block certain information from being released.
Why?
National security concerns, they said.
It makes you wonder what they're still hiding.
Doesn't it?
It does. This document also lists specific records the ARRB was looking at.
Like what?
Like security reports for Kennedy's trip to Texas
Oh,
and internal Secret Service memos about protecting the president.
Interesting stuff.
Right?
Even if those releases weren't always groundbreaking,
Right.
They gave researchers more pieces to the puzzle and kept the debate going.
And it shows how important transparency is.
Absolutely.
And that we need to keep digging for the truth.
Right. Speaking of digging, we have this amazing list of publications and resources
Oh, wow.
put together by John Cullen.
This guy is everywhere.
He's a dedicated researcher. It shows how much material there is on this subject.
It's incredible. It's a gold mine for anyone who wants to go deeper.
For sure.
And he includes all sorts of viewpoints.
From Warren Report supporters to hardcore conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, he even mentions some lesser-known books.
Oh, like what?
Like Bloody Treason, which claims the Zapruder film was tampered with.
Wow.
And The Third Alternative, which focuses on the Secret Service.
I haven't heard of those ones.
It just shows that the research never stops.
Right.
People are always coming up with new interpretations.
The JFK assassination is like a living thing.
It is. It's always evolving as we learn more.
Exactly.
And Cullen even includes reader feedback.
Oh, it's interesting.
It gives you a sense of what everyday people are thinking.
What are they saying?
Well, one reader wonders why more photos and videos haven't come out.
Makes sense.
Yeah, like maybe someone's holding on to crucial evidence.
Could be. Another reader wants the government to be more transparent.
Totally.
Like, there's no reason to keep so many records sealed after all this time.
And another reader challenges people who believe the lone gunman theory, telling them to really look at the evidence presented by researchers who found problems with the Warren Report.
Just so many different opinions.
I know. It's clear that the JFK assassination still has this powerful grip on people.
Absolutely.
It sparks all these emotions and responses.
It's not just history. It's like a cultural touchstone.
It is. Okay, so now let's get into Ruth Paine's own account of her relationship with Lee and Marina Oswald.
Okay, this is a fascinating perspective.
Right, because she was so close to them in the months leading up to the assassination.
Yeah, and her story is especially important because she housed Marina and her kids while Lee was in Dallas.
Exactly. Her account, which was published in Fair Play magazine, gives us this glimpse into their lives and their personalities.
What'd she say about Lee?
She describes him as intelligent but controlling. Like he often talked down to Marina.
Right.
And used Marxist ideology to justify everything.
Interesting.
She also mentions his struggles to find work and his frustration with capitalism.
Makes sense. He sounds like a man who was looking for something.
He does. But her account of the police searching her garage,
where
they found the rifle, is chilling.
I bet.
She describes being totally shocked and in disbelief, realizing that the man she knew might have killed the president.
Wow. That discovery of the rifle in Paine's garage,
Yeah.
that's one of the most debated parts of the whole case.
It is. Some people think it was planted there.
Right.
Others question whether it was even the right rifle.
Paine has always said she didn't know anything about Oswald's plans, that she was just trying to help a friend.
But her testimony about the rifle has been analyzed and argued about forever.
It has. Regardless of what she knew, Paine's role is still fascinating.
It is.
Her firsthand account gives us this window into the lives of Lee and Marina Oswald and those relationships that shaped their paths.
Totally. Now, contrasting with Paine's personal story, we have this document from the COPA conference.
Okay.
They take a more analytical approach to the Paine's involvement.
How so?
They suggest the Paynes might have been more involved than they let on.
In what way?
Well, they highlight things they see as suspicious.
Okay.
Like buying that Oldsmobile right before the assassination.
Yeah.
They don't believe it was just a demonstration, like Michael Payne said.
Right.
They think it was meant for Oswald.
Interesting.
And they also question Michael Payne, saying he couldn't tell a rifle was in his garage.
Even with his military background.
Exactly. And they bring up Sue Wheaton's account of Ruth Payne acting suspiciously in Nicaragua years later.
Right. Potentially gathering intel on Americans opposed to U.S. policies.
They even suggest that the Paynes might have helped separate Lee and Marina.
Wow.
Maybe to make a cover-up easier.
That's a bold claim.
It is. It really challenges Ruth Payne's version of events.
While the Cappadocia document is speculative in some parts, it raises some really important questions.
That deserve more investigation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It reminds us that the search for truth in the JFK assassination is never over.
Right.
It requires careful analysis, critical thinking, and being willing to question what we think we know.
It's all about looking beyond the surface and digging into the complexities of this event.
Exactly. And speaking of digging deeper, let's get back to John Kellen's encounter with Dan Stevens.
Oh, yeah, the guy selling newsletters on the grassy knoll.
That's him. Stevens presents a much more conspiratorial view. He thinks a whole network of people was involved in the assassination.
So that's his take.
Well, he argues that shots came from behind that grassy knoll fence, pointing to figures like Eugene Hale Brading.
Who we talked about earlier.
Exactly. He connects the assassination to organized crime, right-wing extremists, even powerful figures like H.L. Hunt.
So he's basically saying Kennedy was a threat to powerful forces.
Right. Maybe because of his policies on Cuba or Vietnam.
Or even the Federal Reserve.
It's a very intricate theory.
It is. And while it's compelling,
we need to be careful.
Not jump to conclusions.
Exactly. Just because Stevens' research is interesting doesn't mean it's the absolute truth.
We need to look at the evidence carefully.
And consider other explanations.
For example, Brading being arrested near Dealey Plaza is suspicious. But there's no hard proof he was involved in the assassination.
Right.
Yeah.
And those connections to figures like Walker and Hunt, they're mostly based on speculation.
It's true. But Stevens' theory, whether it's totally accurate or not, raises some big questions.
Like what?
Like, was it just one gunman acting alone?
Right.
Or was there a bigger conspiracy?
And if there was, who were the players?
And what were their motives?
Those are the questions that people are still debating.
I know. Even after all these years.
And the search for answers has led researchers down so many paths.
Some more believable than others.
It just shows that history isn't always black and white.
Right.
Sometimes the most important truths are the hardest to find.
And this case is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, it really makes you think and rethink everything you thought you knew. It's like trying to put together this huge puzzle.
Yeah.
But with missing pieces. And pieces that might not even belong.
That's such a good way to put it.
It's a real puzzle.
It is. And it's easy to get lost in all the theories and information.
Absolutely.
That's kind of why we're doing this deep dive, you know, to give you a map to help you navigate all the twists and turns.
Makes sense. We're not telling you what to believe.
Right.
We're just showing you the different sides, the main arguments, the evidence.
Yeah.
And we want you to think for yourself.
Absolutely. We want you to become your own JFK researcher.
Yeah.
To explore all these paths, ask the tough questions.
Right.
And come to your own conclusions.
Exactly. So as we wrap up, let's go over some key takeaways.
Okay.
First, the JFK assassination is super complex.
Oh, yeah.
There's a reason people are still so fascinated by it.
Right.
And why it still sparks debate even after all these years.
Totally.
There are no easy answers.
And the Warren Commission's official story has been challenged by so many researchers and alternative theories.
Oh, yeah, tons of them.
Yeah.
Whether you believe Oswald acted alone or was part of a bigger plot, it's important to understand both sides.
Yeah.
And really look at the evidence.
It's so important.
Don't just take things at face value.
Right.
Dig deeper, question everything, and form your own opinion based on what you find.
And remember, the search for the truth in the JFK assassination isn't over.
It's ongoing.
Yeah.
New information's always coming out.
Yeah. Thanks to groups like the ARRB.
Right. And dedicated researchers who are still investigating.
It's a dynamic process.
Definitely.
Not static.
With every new piece of information.
The puzzle just gets more complicated.
It does.
Leading to more questions and more things to explore.
Exactly.
And finally, the JFK assassination isn't just a historical event.
No way.
It's like a cultural touchstone.
Yeah.
It shapes how we think about power, secrecy, and the limits of what we can know.
It reflects those deeper fears we have about the world.
Yeah.
Our questions about those in power, and our need to understand the events that shape our world.
It reminds us that history isn't just facts and dates in a textbook.
No.
It's a living story that still affects us today.
Absolutely. So keep digging.
Yeah.
Keep questioning, and keep searching for the truth.
Right.
Even if it's hard to find.
Yeah.
The journey is just as important as the destination.
That's a great way to put it. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of JFK assassination research.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We hope you found it insightful.
And thought-provoking.
And maybe even a little unsettling.
It's a case that stays with you.
It does.
Makes you think differently about history evidence and the stories we tell ourselves about the past.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop searching for the truth.
You never know what you might find.
That's right. See you next time.